Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, and great of goodness to all of us. Sir and friends, thank you for your time. We from Group 10 will discuss your material entitled Critical Sociolinguistics, Approaches to Language and Power. Before entering the discussion, I will introduce the members of Group 10. The first is myself, Alifia Najwa Aslam, as the moderator. The second is Sartika, and the last is Fatima Azahra Aziz. The following is the content of the material that we will discuss. First, introductions. Second, power. Third, critical resources analysis. Fourth, critical language awareness in action. Fifth, resistance to powerful language. Sixth, sociolinguistics and symbolic power, the work of Pierre Bourdieu. Seventh, conclusion. Let's discuss the first material. Introduction. To date, there is not comprehensive theory of sociolinguistics that attempts to provide an account of language and society that ties in the rich but diverse findings and approaches. It is not surprising that with such restrictions, even the account of language variation that Chambers gives is one side. Chambers to 23 to 150 argues further that language variation follows a biological instinct concerned with establishing and maintaining a social identity. We must mark ourselves as belonging to the territory, and one of the most convincing markers is by speaking like the people who live there. Differences that exist are to a large extent explainable in terms of status and gender differences among speakers. The school of sociolinguistics that stress this more problematic view of language has come to be known as critical linguistics and more recently critical resource analysis. Two approaches as well as other approaches. One of the main concerns of the critical sociolinguistic approach is the analysis of language samples to reveal how language creates, sustains, and replicates fundamental inequalities in society. This approach is more open to sociological insights regarding social organization, inequality, power, and conflict. This model of societal conflict is not a comfortable starting point for most sociolinguistics. A second reason is that sociolinguistics, especially variationists, find it less easy to operationalize than is to analyze and rework sociolinguistics data within the framework of a critical sociology that within consensus models of society. Therefore, with a study that is accepted by both critical and not critical linguistics insofar as it examines in detail a phenomenon of everyday speech in many societies that shows the effects of power. Power, face, and power in sociolinguistics. Many medieval European languages had two basic forms, the T and V forms in sociolinguistics. Brown and Gilman 1960 explained the dynamics of the pronoun distinction explicitly referring to power, defined as the ability of one individual to control the behavior of another. Power is a relationship between at least two people and is non-reciprocal in the sense that neither can have power in the same area of behavior. According to Brown and Gilman, independent distinctions developed in Europe which made the system of signaling relative power more complex. In most modern European languages that have a T or V distinction. Brown and Gilman define solidarity in terms of personal relationships and level of friendliness. This means that differences in power and status tend not to determine the choice of T or V, rather whether a relationship of solidarity prevails between them. Some theorists argue that power has been redistributed and diffused, but also to some extent disguised. Although Western societies discourage direct expressions of differential status, although Western societies discourage direct expressions of differential status, remnants of the old power hierarchies still persist. Relative status and power may still be marked by related linguistic phenomena such as terms of address in British English. Madam, say, your ladyship, etc. Pronouns, titles, and forms of address are very clear and well-defined subsystems of language that indicate asymmetries of power of solidarity between individuals and the institution they may represent. Power in sociology. One of the most famous explanations of the concept of power can be said to come from Max Weber, 1747, who saw power as a fundamental concept in relation of inequality. Power refers to the ability of people or groups to carry out their will even when opposed by others. Weber argued that classes, status, groups, and political parties are all involved in the distribution of power. David would note that power is often a latent force that involves not only the capacity to realize one's goals in a situation of conflict, but also the potential to prevent the emergence of opposition in the first place. Antonio Gramsci distinguished between rule, where the use of power is clear or known, and hegemony, where the use of power is disguised in such a way that it involves rule with the consent of the governed. These aspects of power emerge in study of language at various levels. At the molecular level, they are involved in such things as a coercion and the spread of language. Sociolinguistics is not only based on sociological theory but also on the linguistic turn of late 20th century social theory and beyond. Such a reciprocal relationship has developed not only because language is the primary medium of social control and power, but because language has expanded dramatically in terms of the variety of functions it performs in modern society. For while love, ideology is widely present in language, and the ideological nature of language must therefore be one of the central themes of modern social science. Critical discourse analysis draws on linguistic theorists and sociolinguists whose writings are somewhat abstract and unknown in mainstream linguistics. We therefore present some of their main ideas related to language before presenting Weiland's model of language use. Ideology and ideological state apparatuses. In sociology, ideology has two related meanings. First, ideology refers to a system of ideas, beliefs, language, and cultural practices that favor a particular social group. Classical Marxist thinkers saw ideology as a system that considers the social, economic, and political relations between the dominant and oppressed classes. Marx and Engels considered ideology to be a part of the superstructure, not the economic-based neo-Marxists. However, view ideology as more fundamental with a dynamic relationship between the base, superstructure, and ideology. Louis Althusser emphasized the relative autonomy of ideology from the economic base and its role in reproducing or changing economic and political relations. Althusser argued that ideology works by placing individuals in subject positions through a process called interpellation. This ideological process takes place in institutions such as the church, the legal system, the family, and especially education, which Althusser called the ideological apparatus of the ISA. Nikos Poltzes later divided the state apparatus into the repressive apparatus, army, police, courts, and the ideological apparatus, church, political parties, trade unions, schools, mass media, and family. Signs of struggle. In linguistics, V. N. Voloshinov, a Soviet scholar, criticized Ferdinand de Saussure's view that emphasized the socially neutral structure of language. Saussure argued that the relationship between linguistic science signifiers and their concept signifies was arbitrary and determined by social convention. However, Voloshinov and Bakhtin emphasize that linguistic science have an ideological nature and can become an arena for class struggle. Bakhtin's concept of heteroglossia described the presence of multiple social orientations within a single linguistic expression, as opposed to the dominant class attempt to make science uniaccentual. Bakhtin also emphasized that human consciousness is shaped through linguistic interaction and that individual identity is composed of multiple social voices. Discourse and decentrate subjects. Michael Foucault on power and the decentralized subject in relation to this discourse. Foucault emphasized that power is not only held by certain parties, but is widely distributed in various social, economic, and educational relations. The concept of discourse in social theory is a structure of knowledge that reflects certain power relations, such as medical discourse that ignored alternatives such as homeopathy, or economic discourse that did not include environmental perspective until the end of the 20th century. In his approach, Foucault sees individuals not as entities with unique consciousness, but as empty entities from various discourses. This is different from the humanist view that sees humans as having full control over language. In their study of power relations and ideology, Michael Foucault and Louis Althusser have different views on how power functions in society. Althusser focuses on the ideological state apparatus (ISA), which includes institutions such as the family, schools, and the media, which he argues serve to maintain state power. Foucault, on the other hand, sees power as more diffuse or not held solely by the state. For Foucault, power is distributed through existing social networks such as the family, kinship groups, and specialized knowledge. Power is embedded in the knowledge and technology that shape modern institutions in the global economy, so that what appears to be socially useful often serves the interest of power.
10.4 Critical language around an action.
Critical resource analysis often focuses on media texts such as television, newspaper, news, advertisement, and so on. Vericlov argues that ideologies are not only decimated through social institutions but also through language itself, specifically in three areas: media, advertising, and propaganda. At the high school level, students are often trained to analyze how short texts in these genres are used to persuade, and how to counteract them with critical rounds. Critical linguistics go a step further by delving deeper into the social forces behind linguistics persuasion. In essence, critical discourse analysis examines how language, especially in the media, advertising, and propaganda, is used to spread certain ideologies and influence people's minds. Newspaper reporting. Vericlo develops this idea by stating that the media creates an idealized subject that must then be negotiated by the actual reader or listener. For example, news reports about layoff can be presented in two different ways: as a situation that just happened or as an action taken by certain parties. These different word choices and sentence structures can affect the reader's perception of the event. Critical research analysis seeks to reveal how certain word choices and sentence structures can benefit certain groups and harm others. However, this approach has also been criticized. Widdowson argues that critical resource analysis is too rigid and does not consider the context of the reader. As an example of discourse, advertising is an integral part of media and plays a role in shaping individual and group identities. Critical research analysis consumption practices and aspirations promoted by advertising as a part of the process of subject identify formation in various societies. Even in societies with limited purchasing power, the desire to own commodities remains high due to the influence of mass advertising and exposure to Western movies and magazines. Advertising can be identified by its characteristics such as the use of codplay and cohesion. 1. Codplay refers to the use of figurative words, rhyme, alliteration, parallel statements, and other poetic devices. 2. Cohesion refers to the relationship between sentences informing a paragraph or stanza from some form of codplay. Advertisements also involve exaggeration. 3. Euphemisms, usually related to potential customers. For example, used cars are called pre-owned. Detergents no longer come in small, medium, and large sizes, but standard, large, and extra large. Potential customers are no longer called picky but discerning. In addition, advertising also has two other characteristics: parasitic and opportunistic. Advertisements often utilize other resources and capture whatever powerful idioms are available. Even Bertelsen 1997 shows how resources associated with the dismantling of apartheid in South Africa in the mid-1990s were soon replaced and taken over by other discourses. Advertising is not just product promotion, but also a powerful form of discourse that can shape people's perception and behaviors. A mobile army of metaphors, language of super powerful. The use of language in the formation of ideology, especially in the media that represent great powers such as the government. Dwight Bollinger, in his book Language, the Loaded Weapon, 1918, identifies three linguistic processes used by those in power. 1. Euphemism, muffling one's own aggression. 2. Dysphemism, exaggerating an opponent's vices. 3. Mystification, the use of jargon to hide certain activities. Examples of this include marketing by the U.S. media during the Vietnam War, where terms such as termination with prejudice
were used in place of assassination and pacification of bombing of civilians. Similar strategies but are also found in other political regimes, including the Communist Gulag and Nazi Germany. Propaganda in Nazi Germany. The Nazi Party used language to shape its nationalist and anti-Semitic ideology. They introduced the Gleichschaltung policy, which aimed to homogenize all aspects of German life according to the ideology. The Ministry of Information and Propaganda, led by Joseph Goebbels, played a key role in spreading this ideology through media, film, and radio. 10.5 Resistance to powerful language. The analyses in the previous section have two characteristics in common. 1. They concentrate largely in language of the media, that is, language that does not involve personal interaction. 2. They make assumptions about how the language of mass communication is received by the audience. Some studies of interactive spoken norms make it clear that the language of the powerful is not swallowed whole by the less powerful. The Weapons of the Weak. James Scott's study in Weapons of the Weak, 1985, which examines the everyday forms of resistance of the oppressed. Scott points out that where there is power, there is resistance, often veiled in everyday actions. Based on his research in the Malaysian village of Sedarka, Scott describes how peasants behave differently in front of landlords, on stage and outside their influence off stage. Before mechanization, landlords show favor to farmers, but after mechanization, relationship deteriorated. Scott also discusses changes in linguistic practices, where peasants began to use terms that were more correctly critical of the elites. Political correctness, power and resistance explores how changes in terminology in society can be used to mask or perpetuate power and social injustice, particularly in the caste system in South India. In Franklin Southworth, 1974, study the term for low caste people in rural Tamil Nadu changed from Parayan to Arijan, a term introduced by Mahatma Gandhi. The aim was to reduce the social stigma against this group. However, while the new term seemed more respectful, their social status remains substantially unchanged, and the new term became a subtle way of insulting them. Furthermore, the term Dalit emerged in the 1990s as an alternative to Harijan, with the more radical aim of challenging the caste structure and asserting that the operation of this group was due to socio-economic dynamics rather than the divine destiny. Anti-language. Halliday introduces the term anti-language to describe the distinct language used by groups that resist dominant societal norms, often through relexicalization, where new words replace old ones in key areas of their identity. These languages often invert elements from secrecy, humor, and rebellion, such as reversing syllables in words like karcha, percakar, servant, and chaluta. Halliday also compares anti-language with teenage slang, CB radio language, and other structural. However, anti-languages are more a response to repressive state structures, while forms like teenage slang challenge ideological norms such as language rules imposed by school and families. Despite the term anti-language, these forms are primarily lexical subsystems rather than fully independent languages with unique framework. Debates about sexism, successful resistance, feminist research on language and gender, highlighting how language structures and usage often reflect male perspective and demean women. Since the 70s, feminists have advocated for a language reform challenging traditional norms that favor patriarchal practices, such as women adopting their husbands' surnames. Despite resistance, feminist efforts have achieved some success, as seen in the widespread adoption of non-sexist language guidelines in the West. Cameron 1995 points out that the true empowerment involves addressing male dominance in both public and private life with potential changes in management styles to empower women. The text also connects with ideas with critical linguistics, which analyzes linguistic science in written and media text, focusing on both form and content. It contrasts with sociolinguistics, which traditionally focuses on spoken interaction and accent. However, issues like dominance in public speech and representation are increasingly relevant to sociolinguistics as well.
The next material is Sociolinguistics and Symbol Power, the work of Pierre Bourdieu. Pierre Bourdieu worked in so much the same critical sociological tradition as the others we have down on in this chapter. Unlike them, he goes beyond this discourse analyzing to address a range of concerns of modern sociolinguistics. Although he was not a linguist, his work in political culture, education, and language offers a base that a unique sociolinguistic theory could be built on. First is symbolic domination. In Bourdieu's view, language interaction reflects and reinforces social structure. Sociolinguistic competence, he agrees, includes not just knowledge of grammar but also the right to be heard and respect, often tied to one's social position. Drawing on Austin's idea of performative utterance, Bourdieu claimed that the power of language comes from social institutions, not just concepts of or words themselves. His challenge of symbolistic power view language as part of an economic model. Then linguistic change have value function, which is social markers, and involve information that yield social profiles. Bourdieu outlines four types of result or capital available to human beings. One is economic capital, two is cultural capital, three is social capital, and four is symbolic capital. Bourdieu sees power as the ability to harness authority with social markers, often as symbolic power rather than different force. The symbol power gives legitimacy to the dominant group, particularly those confer over language and culture norm in sociolinguistic marketplace, like educational and high society. Bourdieu's concept of symbolic dynamic explains how the ruling class import the norm making its way as speaking dress and acting seem irreversible. This dominance related on a social belief in the legitimacy of their norm, even though they are not inherently superior. Power source involve microorganisms where people accept the stand as correct, reinforcing its authority. The second is unifying a linguistic market. This material have two case studies. The first is French. Bourdieu argues that the creation of standardized state language often absurd than conflict involved in their establishment. Using the story of France, he illustrates how the Parisian dialect gradually become the official language, marginalizing religion dialect and reblinding them as inferior patterns. In short-term French, the Parisian dialect only took hold in the 19th century, learning to a bilingual sociality. There are elites spoken in the official language, while the lower classes uses local dialect. After the 1789 revolution, linguistic unification served the new rules by reinforcement and dominance of the official language, which produce political and communicative advance to elites. Bourdieu once again viewing this unification merely as a practical solution of communication across regions. The next case is English in Nigeria. Abaddon Gokporiola used Bourdieu's framework to describe Nigeria's sociolinguistic situation post-colonization. Before colonization, Nigeria had over 400 distinct languages with no single distinct lingual friends. English introduced as a part of colonization become a part of colonization tool of power and rescued the linguistic markers, granting authorization to choose who mastering it. Education in English became a gateway to cultural capital, creating a new elite class that emulate the colonial roles in language and behaviors. This adoption often characterized as speaking though the nose symbolizes alignment with colonial prestige. Gokporiola argued that as English benefit that post-colonial elite, the colonial linguistic hierarchy remain intact. A pattern also seen in culture in like India and Sri Lanka. Third is linguistic variation and the economy of linguistic enhance. Bourdieu analyzes variations in sociolinguistics, though this concept of symbolic domination, linguistic marker, habits, and optimization. Using the elderly woman from birth, France, as an example, he showed how her code switching between dialect and from French reflect both linguistic adaptability and social constraint. Her shift in language based on concept relieve how local dialect the legitimatic and certain interaction demonstrating symbolic domination. Bourdieu contrasts this adaptability with class-based linguistic behavior, noting that dominant class exploit acts with practice language reflection prologue familiarly with it. In contrast, lower middle class speakers often show linguistic insecurity evidenced by hypercorrection as they attempt to adopt prosaic language prematurely, leading to tension and a sense of pretension, and they try to emulate the elite language norms. The Bourdieu's agree with Levy's view that women often exhibit more linguistic insecurity than men, as they see social mobility through symbol means like language and sociality where traditional gender roles limit their access to other forms of capital, unlike Thirdly, approach with few-made language as the norm. Bourdieu suggests male language domination because it is associated with social power. Escher function argues that femininity, characterized by politeness and cooperation, often center male power, with class affecting linguistic gender expression. The last is conclusion. This chapter reviews scholars influenced by Marx who critically examine social structure and language, focusing on inequality and conflict. Althusser and Foucault, idea and ideology and discourse serve as foundational theories, while Polakis and Bakhtin highlight how language himself hold potential for domination and resistance. Key models include Fairclough, three-layered critical discourse analyzing text, discursive practice, and social practice, and Bourdieu framework of symbolic domination, emphasizing concepts like linguistic market and habitats. The chapter questions whether their theory may over-rigidly frame interaction and overlook the flexibility of modern roles as in situations where social power variety based on context. Nevertheless, these framework often valuable tools for analyzing language role with sociality. That's all for me. Thank you.
That's the result of our presentation. I apologize if there are any mistakes in words and pronunciation. Thank you for your time and attention. I close with wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.